there is a strange phenomenon that happens in almost every city on Earth. You see someone driving a luxury car, designer clothes, expensive watch, perfect social media photos, and your brain automatically assumes one thing: they must be wealthy. Then, somewhere else in that same city, another person walks into a grocery store wearing ordinary clothes, no luxury logos, no attention, no audience. Nobody turns their head, nobody notices them. And yet, if you could open both balance sheets, there is a surprisingly high chance that the second person is worth significantly more money than the first. That contradiction sits at the heart of modern wealth, because wealth and the appearance of wealth are not the same thing. In fact, they are often moving in opposite directions, and the people who quietly build wealth understand this better than almost anyone else. They understand something that takes many people decades to learn. Money is loud when it leaves. Money is silent when it grows. The car announces itself. The investment account does not. The vacation gets posted online. The dividend payment does not. The luxury purchase gets attention. The appreciating asset gets ignored. And because human beings are wired to notice what is visible, most people spend their lives chasing signals rather than substance. Today, we're going to talk about the psychology of people who quietly build wealth. Not the influencers, not the lottery winners, not the overnight success stories. We're talking about ordinary people who become financially independent while attracting very little attention. The people who look average right up until the moment you discover they own multiple properties, seven-figure portfolios, or enough investments to never need another paycheck. And once you understand how they think, you start to realize that wealth is not primarily a money problem. It is a psychological problem. Because before wealth appears in a bank account, it appears as a pattern of thinking. And that pattern almost always starts with a relationship to time. The average person thinks in weeks, maybe months. The quietly wealthy think in decades. That sounds simple, but it changes everything. Imagine two people receive the same $5,000 bonus. The first person sees opportunity. The second person sees time. The first asks, "What can I buy?" The second asks, "What can this become?" At first glance, those questions seem almost identical. They aren't. One is focused on consumption. The other is focused on transformation. And over time, that tiny difference compounds into completely different lives. This is one of the first psychological traits of people who quietly build wealth. They see money as a seed, not a reward. Most people treat money like an ending. The quietly wealthy treat money like a beginning. To understand this, think about an acorn. An acorn is small, ordinary, unimpressive. Nobody gets excited about an acorn. But hidden inside that acorn is an entire oak tree. The problem is that the tree requires time, and most people are unwilling to trade immediate satisfaction for delayed multiplication. The quietly wealthy are willing to make that trade, not because they enjoy sacrifice, not because they're smarter, because they've learned to value future freedom more than present excitement. And that is a very different mindset. One mindset asks, "What will make me feel successful today?" The other asks, "What will make my future life easier?" Most financial outcomes are simply the accumulation of that question, repeated thousands of times. The irony is that the quietly wealthy often appear less successful in the beginning. Their friends upgrade apartments. They stay put. Their friends buy newer cars. They keep driving the old one. Their friends increase spending every time income increases. They increase ownership instead. From the outside, it can look like they are falling behind, but they are playing a completely different game. Most people are trying to maximize lifestyle. The quietly wealthy are trying to maximize optionality. And optionality is one of the most powerful concepts in wealth building. Because money's greatest benefit is not what it buys, it's what it allows you to refuse. the ability to leave a toxic job, the ability to walk away from a bad business deal, the ability to survive a financial emergency, the ability to take a risk without destroying your future, the ability to say no. People often think wealth creates luxury, but its most valuable product is leverage over your own life. And the quietly wealthy understand this early. That's why they often look unimpressive, because they are purchasing invisible assets. Freedom rarely photographs well. Nobody posts a picture of 6 months of emergency savings. Nobody posts a picture of avoiding debt. Nobody posts a picture of a diversified index fund. Nobody posts a picture of declining an unnecessary purchase. And yet, those invisible decisions are often the exact decisions creating future wealth. This creates a psychological challenge that most people never overcome. Human beings crave validation. We want proof that our effort is working. We want visible progress. We want recognition. The problem is that wealth building often provides none of those things in the beginning. For years, it can feel like nothing is happening. You save, nothing changes. You invest, nothing changes. You stay disciplined, nothing changes, at least not visibly. And that's where most people quit. Not because the strategy failed, because the psychology failed. The quietly wealthy possess an unusual tolerance for delayed evidence. They are comfortable doing the right thing before the reward becomes visible. That is incredibly rare, because most people need immediate feedback. The gym provides physical changes. School provides grades. Work provides paychecks. But wealth building often operates in silence. You can spend 5 years making excellent financial decisions and still feel like you're standing still. The portfolio grows. The assets accumulate. The foundation strengthens. But emotionally, it feels underwhelming. And that's precisely why so few people reach the later stages. The greatest challenge is not understanding compounding. The greatest challenge is surviving long enough to experience it, because compounding is invisible until suddenly it isn't. For years, the results seem small. Then one day, they become impossible to ignore. And when that day arrives, outsiders often call it luck. They see the outcome. They miss the decade. They see the tree. They never saw the acorn. The people who quietly build wealth understand something else that most people don't. Income is not the same thing as wealth. This sounds obvious, but if it were truly obvious, more people would act accordingly. Modern society celebrates income, promotions, raises, high-paying careers, 6-figure salaries, 7-figure businesses. And while income matters, the quietly wealthy understand that income is only useful if it eventually becomes ownership. Because income stops when work stops. Ownership continues. Imagine 2 people earning exactly the same amount. Both make $150,000 per year. One spends most of it. The other gradually converts part of that income into assets. 20 years later, they may occupy completely different financial worlds. Not because one earned dramatically more, because one transformed income into ownership. The quietly wealthy become obsessed with ownership, not in an unhealthy way, not because they are greedy, because ownership changes the direction of money. Employees exchange time for money. Owners exchange assets for income. One model requires constant participation. The other creates increasing independence. And this psychological shift is profound. Because once someone begins thinking like an owner, they stop asking different questions. Instead of asking, how much does this pay? They begin asking, what does this produce? A very different lens emerges. A car is no longer just transportation. It's a cost. A property is no longer just a building. It's a cash flow machine. A stock is no longer just a ticker symbol. It's ownership in a productive business. The quietly wealthy train themselves to see production where others see consumption. And once you develop that lens, it becomes difficult to unsee. You begin noticing how much of society is designed around spending. Every advertisement, every social platform, every luxury brand, every status symbol, all competing for attention, all encouraging immediate gratification. And gratification is powerful. That's what makes it dangerous. The human brain loves rewards, especially immediate rewards. Psychologists call this present bias, the tendency to value immediate pleasure more heavily than future benefits. The quietly wealthy are not immune to this bias. They simply learn how to manage it. They create distance between desire and action. When they want something, they wait. When they feel emotional, they pause. When they feel pressure to impress others, they step back. This creates one of the biggest advantages in wealth building: fewer expensive mistakes. Because many financial disasters are not mathematical failures. They're emotional failures. The impulse purchase, the oversized house, the luxury car bought too early, the investment made out of fear, the investment sold out of panic. The quietly wealthy understand that controlling emotions often matters more than predicting markets, which is why many wealthy people appear surprisingly calm. Not because they know the future, because they understand themselves. They know fear can be expensive. They know ego can be expensive. They know envy can be expensive. And they know comparison can become one of the most expensive habits of all. Comparison is particularly dangerous because it creates artificial needs. You were perfectly happy with your car until your neighbor bought a nicer one. You were perfectly satisfied with your home until social media showed you a larger one. You were perfectly content with your progress until someone else's highlight reel appeared on your screen. The quietly wealthy recognize this trap. They understand that comparison destroys financial efficiency because it constantly moves the target. The moment you reach one goal, another appears. The moment you achieve one milestone, a new standard emerges. The race never ends, which is why many quietly wealthy people stop participating altogether. They define success internally, not externally. And that distinction changes everything. External success depends on other people. Internal success depends on principles. External success requires applause. Internal success requires alignment. External success is unstable. Internal success is remarkably durable. This is one reason wealthy people often seem boring, at least from the outside. They don't constantly chase excitement. They don't reinvent themselves every 6 months. They don't jump on every trend. They don't need every upgrade. Because they understand a truth that most people learn very late. Excitement and progress are not the same thing. In fact, some of the most important financial decisions you'll ever make feel incredibly boring. Automatic investing, living below your means, avoiding unnecessary debt, reinvesting profits, maintaining liquidity, diversifying assets. None of these activities generate much excitement, but they generate results. The quietly wealthy become comfortable with boredom, not because they lack ambition, because they understand that wealth is usually built through repetition. The same good decisions, repeated consistently, for years, maybe decades. This is another psychological difference. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and dramatically underestimate what they can accomplish in 20. The quietly wealthy reverse that mistake. They stop looking for breakthroughs and start looking for systems. A breakthrough depends on luck. A system depends on consistency. And consistency is easier to control. This is why wealthy people often seem patient. They are not waiting passively. They are allowing systems to work, allowing investments to compound, allowing businesses to mature, allowing assets to appreciate, allowing time to perform its function. Time is perhaps the greatest advantage quietly wealthy people possess. Not because they have more of it, because they understand its value earlier. Most people spend their youth trying to maximize lifestyle. The quietly wealthy spend their youth trying to maximize future options. those options eventually become freedom. And freedom creates something that money alone never can: peace. Not excitement, not status, not admiration. Peace. The peace of knowing that an unexpected expense won't destroy you. The peace of knowing you can survive a setback. The peace of knowing you have choices. The peace of knowing your future is not entirely dependent on your next paycheck. This is the hidden destination most people are actually seeking. They think they want wealth. What they really want is the feeling they believe wealth will create. Security, freedom, control, flexibility, time. And the people who quietly build wealth understand that those outcomes are created long before the money arrives. They are built through habits, through thinking, through restraint, through patience, through discipline, through thousands of invisible decisions nobody applauds. Which brings us to the final psychological secret. The quietly wealthy rarely think of themselves as wealthy, even when they are, because wealth building teaches humility. The more they learn, the more uncertainty they see. The more assets they acquire, the more risk they understand. The more successful they become, the less interested they are in proving it. That may be the greatest irony of all. The people most desperate to look wealthy often aren't, and the people who truly are wealthy often feel no need to announce it, because they no longer need validation from strangers. They've built something far more valuable, a life that belongs to them. And perhaps that's the real lesson. The psychology of people who quietly build wealth is not really about money. Money is simply the byproduct. The real skill is learning how to think independently in a world designed to influence your thinking. Learning how to delay gratification in a culture built on immediacy. Learning how to value ownership over appearance. Learning how to prioritize freedom over status. Learning how to play a long game while everyone around you is focused on the next few months. Because wealth is rarely created in a dramatic moment, it is usually created in silence, one decision at a time, one investment at a time, 1 year at a time, until one day, what looked like ordinary choices become an extraordinary life. And that's why the people who quietly build wealth are often the last people you'd expect. Because while everyone else was trying to look successful, they were quietly becoming successful. And by the time the difference becomes visible, the game has already been won.